You wake up. It is the middle of the night. The fire has died down to a low orange glow. Around you, bodies stir in the darkness. Someone whispers. Someone else turns over and pulls a hide closer. A child makes a soft sound, then goes quiet again. This was not an emergency. This was just Tuesday. For the vast majority of human history, waking in the middle of the night was not a problem to solve. It was simply part of what sleep looked like. And if you surfaced in the darkness and could not fall back asleep right away, you were not anxious about it. You were not staring at the ceiling, running calculations about how tired you would be tomorrow. You were doing exactly what your body was built to do. Modern sleep, 8 straight unbroken hours, alone in a sealed room, beginning around 11 p.m. and ending with an alarm at 7 a.m., is not ancient sleep. It may actually be one of the most radical departures from our biological design that modern life has ever imposed on us. So what did sleep actually look like for your ancestors? The answer is stranger, richer, and in many ways more restorative than anything a sleep clinic would recognize today. In 2015, neuroscientist Jerome Siegel at UCLA published a landmark study in the journal Current Biology. He and his team traveled to 3 of the last remaining traditional hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia, and measured their sleep using wrist-worn actigraph sensors for weeks at a time. What they found immediately shattered the assumption that ancient humans slept longer, or that they were somehow naturally more rested than you. The Hadza slept an average of 6.9 to 8.5 hours per night. Not 12. Not 10. Not dramatically more than the average modern person. They went to sleep roughly 3 hours after sunset. They woke just before sunrise. But here is what the data actually revealed: they almost never fell asleep at the same time twice. Their sleep timing shifted constantly with the seasons. In the dry season, they slept later. In the cold season, they slept earlier. Their bodies were not following a clock on a wall. They were following temperature. And that detail matters more than almost anything else in this story. Your ancestors did not organize their sleep around light the way you might expect. They organized it around heat, or rather, the loss of it. Siegel's team found that in all 3 groups, sleep onset correlated most strongly with the nightly drop in ambient temperature, not with the disappearance of the sun. They fell asleep as the world grew cold. They woke up as it began to warm again before dawn. This is one reason why staring at a bright screen at 11 p.m. is so disruptive. It is not just about the light. Screens also emit a small but real amount of warmth, and your face perceives it. Russell Foster, a circadian neuroscientist at Oxford and one of the world's leading researchers on the biology of sleep, has spent decades mapping how tightly the brain's sleep-wake system is anchored to these thermal cues. Your body knows when to sleep. It is simply being given false information by the environment you have built around it. But the most important thing Siegel's data revealed was not about timing. It was about structure. Your ancestors almost certainly did not sleep in one long, continuous block. For most of human history, sleep came in 2 distinct phases, separated by a quiet hour or more of wakefulness deep in the night. Historians call this segmented sleep, or biphasic sleep, a meaning split into 2 parts. The first phase began after dusk and lasted roughly 4 hours. Then came the awakening. Gentle. Calm. Not panicked. People would lie still in the darkness. They would talk softly. Some would tend the fire. Some would pray, or reflect on their dreams, or simply rest in that warm, half-conscious space between sleeping and waking. Then came the second sleep, another 4 hours, usually ending near sunrise. Roger Ekirch, a historian at Virginia Tech, spent 16 years documenting this pattern in pre-industrial Europe. His 2005 book, At Day's Close, Night in Times Past, catalogued over 500 historical references, drawn from court records, diaries, medical texts, and literature, to first sleep and second sleep as distinct, separately named events. Not symptoms of insomnia. Not signs of illness. Just the normal structure of a night. Ekirch found that people in medieval and early modern Europe spoke about their first sleep and their second sleep the way you might refer to breakfast and lunch, as two separate, understood, recognized things. The quiet period between them had a name in some traditions, the watch. Or the quiet. It was known. It was valued. It was used. The question is, when did all of that disappear? Faster than you would think. When artificial lighting began spreading through European cities in the late 17th century, the two-sleep pattern vanished from historical records within a single generation. The night shrank. People began staying up later. The first sleep was pushed back, compressed, and eventually fused with the second into one long block. By the time the Industrial Revolution was fully underway, 8 continuous hours had become the new norm, not because biology demanded it, but because the factory schedule did. You are sleeping on a timetable designed for a textile mill in 1820. Your nervous system is still running the older code. So let's reconstruct a night. Let's say you are Hadza, living near the shores of Lake Eyasi in northern Tanzania, roughly 10,000 years ago. The sun drops below the acacia line. The temperature falls fast, it can shed 10 degrees in 30 minutes here. Your fire is burning low. Around you, somewhere between 20 and 30 people are settling in. You do not sleep alone. You have never slept alone in your life. The idea of sleeping in isolation, in a sealed room, with a locked door and drawn curtains, would strike you as something close to punishment. Around you are your kin, your partners, your children, your elders. But here is something important, not everyone is asleep at the same time. Polly Wiessner, an anthropologist at the University of Utah who has spent decades living and working with the Hadza, documented this overlapping sleep pattern carefully. At any given point during the night, at least 1 or 2 members of the group were alert and awake. This was not accidental. It functioned as distributed vigilance, a way of ensuring that no predator, no intruder, no collapsing ember ever found a camp fully unconscious and unguarded. Your group slept in shifts without anyone having to assign them. You drift off. Your core temperature falls with the air around you. The fire crackles softly. Sometime after midnight, you surface. You are not alarmed. You lie still. Around you, 1 or 2 others are also awake in the dark. And then someone begins to speak, quietly, unhurried, in that low campfire voice. Wiessner documented something remarkable about nighttime fires among the Hadza. The conversations that happened around the dying fire in the deep of night were categorically different from daytime conversations. Daytime talk was practical, resource allocation, disputes, planning, social coordination. Nighttime talk was something else entirely. It was mythological. It was imaginative. It was the space where stories lived, where the inner world of the group was shared and shaped. Night was when your ancestors became storytellers, and storytelling was when culture moved between generations. You lie in the warm dark, listening. Then, without forcing it, without tracking the time, you sleep again. This second sleep is often described in both historical and anthropological accounts as deeper, more vivid, and richer in dreams. There is likely a physiological explanation for this. The stage of sleep most associated with dreaming, rapid eye movement sleep, or REM, naturally becomes more concentrated in the second half of the night. By sleeping in 2 phases with a rest between them, your ancestors may have been accessing the most emotionally and cognitively restorative hours of sleep in a more deliberate way than modern schedules allow. Now consider what your ancestors were not doing during that quiet hour of wakefulness. They were not watching a clock. They were not calculating how many hours remained. They were not catastrophizing about their performance at tomorrow's meeting. The word insomnia, from the Latin for no sleep, was not applied to middle-of-the-night waking in pre-industrial Europe. Ekirch found no record of it being treated as a disorder. It simply had a different name and a different place in the architecture of the night. This is the uncomfortable implication of all of this research. What we now diagnose as sleep maintenance insomnia, waking between 2 and 4 a.m. and struggling to return to sleep, may not be a disorder at all. It may be a biological pattern that has been pathologized because it no longer fits the schedule modern life requires. Ekirch has made this argument directly. So have several sleep researchers who have followed his work. Your body is not broken. It is returning to a rhythm your environment no longer accommodates. One final thing. Your ancestors rarely slept flat on a soft elevated surface for 8 motionless hours. Siegel's actigraph data showed that Hadza sleepers shifted position frequently throughout the night, sometimes resting semi-reclined against a tree or rock rather than lying fully horizontal. They moved. They adjusted. The modern prescription of strict horizontal stillness in a climate-controlled room at a fixed temperature for a fixed duration is not ancient biology. It is an industrial design choice. Your body still remembers something older. The next time you wake at 3 a.m. with that quiet, inexplicable alertness, when the room is dark and still and you feel the pull of wakefulness for no reason you can name, you are not malfunctioning. You are ancient. You are resting in the gap between your first sleep and your second. Somewhere in the dark around you, someone is tending the fire. Someone is beginning a story. The temperature is still falling. There is nothing to fix. You just have to let it carry you back. You wake up. The fire has died down. Around you, the world is still. And this, all of this, was just Tuesday.